Okay, welcome everybody to the Comics Fu Show. I'm one of the co-hosts, Kurtis Fujita. I'm a Kung Fu instructor. And an artist, the creative director at Silverline Comics. And my upcoming comic book is called Shadow Ghost. It's the Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master. So I'm going to hand the baton over to my co-host, Patrick Lugo. Patrick, if you could please share with everybody some information about yourself.
I'm Patrick, art director for Kung Fu Tai Chi magazine. I'm also an author and comic creator. My forthcoming comic book is A Tiger's Tale. Picture the Jungle Book meets the Tao Te Ching, coming to Kickstarter Chinese New Year, February 1st, 2022.
And so for everybody watching this for the first time, our show, if you haven't caught it from the namesake, is all about comic books, kung fu, animation, manga, anime, and anything and everything in between. And so our special guest tonight falls perfectly within that category. He's a dedicated martial artist, having done martial arts for over 2 decades. Additionally, he's the CCO, and a founder of Powerhouse Animation, and that's the company that brought you shows like Castlevania, Masters of the Universe Revelation, Seis Manos, Blood of Zeus, and just to name a few. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Brad Graeber. Welcome, Brad.
Hi, I'm very excited to be here. The show grew from basically, I had written this thing that was basically a Shaw Brothers love letter, right? But set in Mexico. Being from Texas, that so much of our urban myths at the time when I was growing up revolved around, narco traffickers and satanic cults and all that sort of stuff that are the stories that teenagers tell one another, right? The Constanzo murders and Matamoros had a big effect on people that were close to Mexico. And so I was like, well, we'll set it in Mexico in the 70s, and that's how we'll get all this stuff in there. And then Alvaro came on board and we recreated it together, and he changed so much and added so much more authenticity to it. And it became like a lot of those Shaw Brothers love letters remained. Because I don't know if y'all noticed, but I tried my best to get Bach May stuff in with Silencio. Like the idea was kind of like it's a Peter and the Wolf type thing, but with the different styles of Kung Fu, right? You got Isabella doing Hungar, you got Silencio doing Bach May and Mantis, and then you have Jesus doing the drunken boxing. And so it was a way to kind of get all of those in there and have them all have a different sense of movement, like the different instrumentation in Peter and the Wolf. And so that always remained. But there were, lots of other Easter eggs and call outs to other Shaw Brothers movies that, I had to let go for the sake of the story.
That's excellent. I think it has to do with a lot with restraint, right? And that's one of the things in martial arts is like, once you have this power, what do you do with it? The next level of power is restraint, right? Is the power of oneself. I would be curious, it's one thing to excel on your own as an artist, as a martial arts. It's other thing to be a leader, and to kind of, galvanize people to move towards a goal. How has that journey been for you as the head of, one of the heads of Powerhouse Animation? I mean, how was that a slow transition? Was it something that you kind of all of a sudden found yourself in, or what was that experience like? Because that's very unique and not everybody experiences that.
Yeah, I mean, and if we're being completely honest, the early days of Powerhouse were me just not wanting to let go. What happened was I had moved to Austin to work at this .com, and they brought a whole bunch of animators from the Blue Studios. 2 of them became my partners at Powerhouse, and we were working in animation, and I just loved it so much. But it was a .com, and so it went the way of all the .coms. And here we were, and we were all like, well, I guess we'll have to move back to LA or move back because like, what are we going to do? And I was like, no, let's stay in Texas. Let's make a studio here. We're here. And I was born in Austin. And so like, it's something that I really want to do. And Austin has always had many animation studios like throughout the years. And so like in the beginning, it was like that. And then, you know, when you're a small business, I'm sure everybody goes through it. Like there was so many struggles. Like, again, we started wanting to do feature films went away. Then we started doing Flash and educational stuff, and that kind of died. And then we were doing video game stuff. The Wizard magazine story is basically this. We were out of projects. There was a contest in Wizard magazine that was going to be judged by Kevin Smith. And so I made a cartoon that was like Marvel characters inside the View Askew universe thing. I'm going to try to tell the story the shortest way I can, but y'all could edit it later if you'd like to.
Take your time.
So what happened was, we had finished it, and we had not paid ourselves in quite some time. Like the studio, we had work, but we were keeping the lights on. And so we finished the cartoon, we put it up on our website to send later. And then I went home, came in the next morning, and then the first email I get is from our ISP, the internet service provider. And it's like, y'all have gone X number of gigabytes above what you're allowed to have for, you know, traffic. And it was like a $750 fine. And I was like, that's it, we're done. That's the end of Powerhouse. Don't have $750, way to go. What happened? And then the phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was, hey, I'm Kevin Smith. Saw your cartoon, and I really liked it. And I had a best friend from grad school who also worked with us named Stephen Parker, who was also from Jersey and talked similarly. And I was like, F you, Steve, and like almost hung up the phone because he knew I was working on this cartoon.
Oh, that's awesome.
We hadn't sent it anywhere. So like nobody could have seen it except for, you know, people we knew. And so I was like, you know, and he's like, no, this is really Kevin Smith. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, I saw the cartoon. I think it's hilarious. And so what had happened is one of the other guys who worked at the studio sent it to a friend, who sent it to a friend, who sent it to a friend. It got all the way that evening to Joe Quesada over at Marvel, and Joe Quesada sent it to Kevin Smith. Now, the reason this story is important is because we were trying to figure out a way to survive as a studio at the time. And so I bought like an old Galaga machine, and we repurposed it into, you know, put a PC in it, hooked up a joystick to it, and we're programming Flash games to work in an arcade machine. And we had made an ad to do that, even though we had not actually ever made one. But we were like, hey, we'll put this ad on the website. Maybe somebody will buy one and we can afford to play around with it. And Kevin said, I saw the ad on your website for the custom arcade machines. I'd like to make one of those as a wrap party present for Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez for Jersey Girl. Wow. And he was like, how much do they cost? And I was like, and just threw out a number because we had never done one before. But luckily it was enough to where we could start paying ourselves again, and it kind of saved the studio. We made them, we drove them in a U-Haul to the last day of shooting on Jersey Girl and gave them to Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, went and put it in their apartment. And there was enough, because they were so hot at the time, there was enough press around that it generated enough interest and had our name out around that we picked up a whole bunch of other work and other jobs because of it. So it was that one Wizard contest and Kevin Smith that ended up saving Powerhouse from going under. And then, you know, cut 2 decades later, and we're working with him on Masters of the Universe again. So like, it's just one of those wonderful cyclical, you know, synchronicity kind of stories about just how everything's connected in a way. I don't know.
That's amazing.
It's kind of a lesson in Taoism somewhere in there,
right?
Right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It is the lesson in Taoism somewhere in there. And like, it also shows you to, you know, take some of those risks and chances and put something out there that you know could work, even if you haven't actually completely done it. But yeah, it was, and we made like 6 or 7 of those arcade machines, and it became a thing that kept us around for a while until animation came back, and it came back in games. And it was us working in games that led to Castlevania. Like it attracted these young people, these people who were anime influenced, these big fans of games. All of it. I didn't play very many video games growing up, just being honest. Like I was drawing or watching someone playing video games while drawing, or doing other sorts of stuff. But that's the kind of folks that came into the studio, and then we heard they were making Castlevania, that Frederator was, and we contacted them and said, please, we think we would excel at this. We're an animation studio that works in video games and we do action. And we flew out and almost pitched ourselves like you were an advertising company. Like, this is why you should hire us. And luckily they believed in us and gave us the job, and that's what's led to everything else that we've done.
That's phenomenal. I don't know all the details, but when you say about your initial meeting with Kevin Smith and then years later, I mean, that's not a coincidence either. I mean, people have opportunities where they form a business relationship with somebody and it falls apart because things didn't work out right, or they weren't doing, so, I think it's great that you share that, because a lot of people and a lot of young people don't understand that part, in Go Food, we call it the eating bitter, right?
Right.
And it takes a big person to convey the lean times, and the only thing everybody sees now is all the things that you've accomplished and all the things you've done. They don't know what you went through, but that was the most important thing, that's great that you share that, because I think more people in the art and in martial arts need to hear that. Everybody loves the montage, and there is a montage in real life, but about 10, 15, 20 years is the montage, and you have to live it out day by day, right? So
it's a very slow motion montage.
Yeah, it's a very slow motion montage, and there's a lot of accepting defeat and also eating bitter throughout the whole thing. But it is amazing, and you hear this in lots of people's stories, how it still is a sequence that leads them exactly to where they need to be. And like I can't think of another story other than Powerhouses that's just so very true to that. Like, there weren't domestic animation studios that were doing the type of animation we did, and it was something that for quite some time was viewed as a misstep on our part. Like, here's another small anecdote, but we were pitching Seis Manos before we worked on Castlevania. Like, I'd created the show concept. We were out there kind of pitching it, and I remember there was another executive in animation who I showed him this little test that we did. Sam Dietz, the director of Castlevania, had animated this 1 minute test, and Carl Thiel, who did the music for Seis Manos, he's from Austin, and he did a piece of music for us to animate it to. It looks nothing like what the final show looks like. It's a bit different in style, and Jesus is real skinny and has like a vest and has abs and stuff like that. It's a completely different looking thing. Isabella's very thin. Anyway, but we were out pitching that around, and I remember this executive, who's a friend of mine, was like, you got to stop. Like, you can't do this, Brad. Like, it makes me feel bad, because if it doesn't have a toy behind it, if it's not based on an IP, if it doesn't work for kids, like, it's just not going to sell. And watching you guys, it seems like you're just kind of running in circles trying to do this sort of stuff that just doesn't sell here. Like, but at that time we were in the background working on Castlevania first season, and I knew it was going to work. And so like, I was just like, but you put all your faith in that. And Castlevania did come out, and it did work, and it was a fantastic show, thanks to everybody that was involved in it. But it opened the door to Seis Manos, which was the test that we showed when we were trying to get Castlevania. Sam had also done a whole bunch of amazing Naruto fan art, like fan animations that we also showed there, and we showed some of the video game stuff that we worked on. But like, I don't know how else it would have been done in retrospect. You know what I mean? Like, if there wasn't the studio that had such a deep background in video games, such a love for, anime and all of this other sort of stuff, I don't know how that show would have happened the way that it did, which now has opened the door to so many other genre-based shows that are out there right now, and kind of gotten rid of that idea that you can't make animation for adults. You can't make it in different genres, that it's, animation itself is a genre as opposed to a medium, which it's a medium, it's not a genre. So like that's I think our path was the path that we were intended to be on, but it felt like 15 years of failure, up until that point. Like it's the truth,
Definitely.
It was kind of like meditating in a cave for 9 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It has so much of that, that sort of finding the right path, just stay on it, do not do, all that sort of stuff is baked into the Powerhouse story. Luckily, I'm a big Stephen Mitchell fan, and listened to all the second book of the Tao and his translation of the Tao Te Ching. And so like whenever I would go and work out, and this sounds crazy, but that's what I would put in my headphones while working out, was like just listening to that stuff. So while everybody else is listening to like Eminem or whatever in the gym to like get pumped up, I'm sitting there listening to Stephen Mitchell drone on about the Tao. But it was exactly what I needed at the time too. There's so much in there that influenced not just my kung fu, but the animation studio and the path that we follow. Yeah,
that must have given you so much internal fortitude to like kind of stake your claim and then wait for the rest of the world to catch up.
I knew it from the people that work for us, right? Like and again, I could go on for days. They're just such an amazing group of people, and they all love what they do so much. They have the same sort of stuff that martial arts practitioners or artists have, where they're just pouring everything of themselves into it. But it's what they liked, and it was a young studio. Like we had like the old guard of feature guys, but there were only like 4 or 5 of us, right? And then you had like 60 or whatever younger folks that were in there, and I knew that it's what was going to be popular just because it's what they wanted to make. It's what they wanted to watch. You could tell just by going to these conventions and being around everybody that it's like, y'all don't understand. Anime fandom has evolved and grown and is massive. It's not a small little demographic for nerds. It's like this entire generation came up with it, and they don't see the difference between live action and animation. Like they just want to see good stories. And there's just so much that you could do in animation. And so like when they're excited working on it, and they're excited and like really getting into how the story should be told and all that, that you're on the right path, because at the end of the day, these people are your audience.
That's great. I think so much of it has to do with faith, and not necessarily people have religious, spiritual paths, whatever, but I always feel like when you're going for a big endeavor, whether it's kung fu or art or whatever, you're going to have the naysayers, of course. And sometimes it's the people closest to you, unfortunately, that cut the deepest. Your job, right, is just to be that one person that says, yes, it can happen. You have to fight that tide,
Yeah.
And that, I don't know where that comes from. Sometimes it comes from influences, life experience. For you, what was it that preserved that in you? Because that's not easy to do when you're facing so much opposition and challenges. Where do you draw that strength from? Where do you draw that inspiration from?
I actually draw it from other people's practices. So let me see if the best way to articulate this. In entertainment, there's lots of people who want to do it all, and they want to be fully in charge, and they want to, there's so much ego, right? And it's a very ego-driven, sometimes martial arts is too, but entertainment is absolutely one of the most ego-driven things in the world. But what I found over time, especially when you're I started off as an animator. I wanted to do animation. Working in the company, you quickly see it's like, oh wow, look what they're doing. Like that's so much better than what I could do. And so you're like, make sure that person's working on this. And then slowly over time, you're drawing a little bit less, you're doing a little bit more spreadsheets, you're doing a little bit more communication with everybody. but the martial arts in a way, and Taoism and a whole bunch of other stuff, like really allowed me, I think, to cut the ego part of it. Like, I believe in Kung Fu, not just the martial art, but when somebody has the skill and has put into practice, I'm happy to give them notes, but I'm not going to tell them what to do, you know? So like, to me, when Alvaro came on board on Seis Manos, it was a similar thing. It's like, you have to give them a lot of control over stuff, and, you know, make sure that it's authentic on the other side and that it's a good story. Same with when Daniel came on. Same with Carl doing the music. It's like, he's a composer. He can play all of these instruments. Like, he knows this stuff. Like, I'd like if that part was a little bit faster, but he has the Kung Fu, I don't. You know what I mean? And so like, I think what has led to my success, not necessarily Powerhouse's, but, you know, all, you know, because I'm just a part of the company, but it's the idea that, okay, when I see somebody with a special practice, I'm going to let them have control of that area of the production. And you watch it all and you make sure nobody fights and you try to keep the egos away from each other. But at the end of the day, I just want the best possible product that we can deliver. And so much of that needs to be from letting go and letting people take your toy and play with it. And that's what happened on Castlevania. So I learned a lot through that process. Like Kevin Coldy, who's the main executive producer on the show, he worked at Frederator, amazing human being. But I've learned a lot of that through watching him. Like he does have control over the stuff. He does like to watch, make sure everything ties together, but at the end of the day, he lets people experiment and use their Kung Fu and whatever their skill set is. And so kind of took that forward with everything else that we do. And most of the time, the productions that you hear about that have the most trouble is because people aren't willing to let go of that control. They want their name on top. They want it to be so-and-so's whatever. And it's just like, in animation, you have hundreds of people working on something. So like out of the gate, that's false. Like, you know, there's out of the gate, it's not all yours, no matter what show it is. And so like, it's all about the team. It's all about giving people, you know, the space to an agency to do what they want to do inside of the production. And that's what makes the best stuff.
That's excellent. That's excellent advice. Thank you. Definitely. Well, is there anything that, you know, because we're starting to wind down now, is there anything that's coming up that you can talk about or you'd like to share, not necessarily just with Powerhouse Animation, but, you know, with your martial arts or just in general, or are the NDAs signed and
No, I mean, there's a few things that we can't talk about. We're working on a Tomb Raider series for Legendary that should be really, really exciting. We're also working on a Skull Island animated series, which I think is going to be very exciting. I'm actually out working on a concept that's based on an old Taoist parable that I'm hoping we'll sign some contracts on and the next couple of weeks that will eventually possibly be a feature. And that's, you know, that's my love lane, and that's what I want to work on. But to any martial artists that are out there, one thing that I would say is I wish somebody had told me this when I was younger, but to try to really fall in love with your forms. Like at the end of the day, like there's a reason Kung Fu was taught that way, and we've forgotten it over time. And a lot of people have like pushed down that part of the training art. And to me, there's just, whether it's, you know, I don't know that it's the best necessarily training for fighting, but it is the best training in the world for the movement, for understanding your specific art, for the history of the art. There's just so much. It's such a treasure. And the older I get, the more I realize just how much is buried in that stuff. Every morning out there doing that stuff, you're just like, oh my God, like I've been doing this form for 2 decades, you know? And then you do it one morning, you're like, oh, that's what this is, right? And that, to me, like, even if you just do a small set of them and do them for the rest of your life, like at my age and this part of my journey, I just wanted to share out there with younger people to not just get discouraged with that and to really treasure the forms, because they're kind of a key to the art that you're studying. And I just can't praise it enough.
Well, Brad, I mean, we could probably spend another hour just on like getting into like that transmission of knowledge, right? And how the different forms, well, I mean, not just forms, but like the different forms those transmissions take, you know, if that makes any sense.
No, it totally makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. And it's the way you said that is the only way to say it, but it's one of those things that to a younger practitioner is like, what does that mean? But like, trust me, if you do them for an hour every day for a certain number of years, it's going to mean so much to you. Like there's different ways to do them that transmits different parts. It's just, here's a kind of entertainment-based anecdote. I remember I was at a convention, a comic convention. We were talking about Manos, and I bumped into Ray Park, who does Darth Maul and all those characters, right? And I had this bracelet on that has a mantis on it. And he was like, "Oh, praying mantis, Bung Bo," and I was just walking by him, and I was like, "Yeah," and he puts the first hand out and does the next one, and I was like, "All right," and like, who knew Ray Park knows all of Bung Bo, and we did it right next to each other, backwards and forwards, and it's the same form. Never met this man in my life. We didn't train at the same schools, but you know, and you also, if you're a student and you see somebody else do a form a different way than yours on Facebook, don't care about that. That doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, doing those forms, there's something that your teacher put into there and the teacher's teacher put into there, and that stuff has come down to you in a very special way. And like, it took me 2 decades to figure out just how much value there is in that stuff. And it's so difficult to explain, but it has to be done. It has to be practiced. It ties back to all the other sort of stuff that we talked about. You know, Kung Fu is practice.
It's one of those things like, yeah, I mean, I so appreciate you saying that and conveying that to people, because the forms are the legacy, right?
Yeah.
And you know, my Sifu used to say, a form's like a good book. You have to read it many times before you get the deeper meaning. And I even liken it to traveling. Now, you travel and you go away and you come home, and home may not have changed, but because you've traveled and you've seen something different, everything's changed, even to you. And that is the time machine. I mean, we both are part of the Honga lineage, right? Which is legendary. I mean, right? You know, I was trying to explain to people, it's like, imagine if you were doing the techniques of Sir Lancelot's swordsmanship or Robin Hood's archery, you know?
Yeah.
But when you do Fu Hawk that he kind of re-choreographed, I can't go back in time and meet Wang Feng, but I can literally walk in his footsteps, step by step, the way he did. And that is just absolutely amazing. And you uncover things through context and through, you know, all these different things. There's the move that is afterwards, and then there's the context between the two. And so you know,
you have to practice it enough to get that doing, not doing, going, because that's the key that unlocks those thoughts as you're going through it. And so that, like, it's not something that's going to be present when you're learning, but it's the end of the journey, you know, later on, where that stuff just gives you so much. And it's I don't know, I just regret every hour that I wasn't practicing when I was younger. And like, I would read, you know, Bruce Lee or something and be like, this is the part you throw out, this is the part that doesn't matter. And then like later on, it's like, okay. And then it just, oh my God. It's just, there's so much in that stuff that I wish somebody had pushed it a little harder on me when I was younger. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna put this on loop during one of my classes. Just have you pontificate on this over and over, right there.
Plus, if you want to be a fight choreographer, like if your interest is entertainment as even more than martial arts, forms are the best damn thing in the world to fight choreograph to, because you could just be like, okay, let's just have this guy do Daegung or Fu Hak Sing or something, and then like throw people at it and have them do the wrong move to that part of the form, and he'll beat up a room, and like, there it is, I choreographed. It's like, no, you just did a form.
Totally. You see that in the middle of things, you know? Well, it's such a treat to have somebody that kind of walks both paths, you know, and has so much insight into it. So
the honor was all mine. I appreciate both of you. It was a fantastic conversation. And as other things happen, you know, I wish you guys a lot of success on the podcast, and I'll definitely be tuning in. But like, hopefully we'll have another project soon, and I could swing back by and we could talk about it all again.
Anytime, absolutely.
I mean, you don't need a project, because we could just talk about, you know, the philosophical stuff or the pop culture stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'm telling you, if you ever want to talk just comics, you know, we could talk about all the different fighting styles in comic books, and just geek out over Batroc the Leaper and all that stuff all day, every day too.
Okay, here, this is a potential tradition. We've asked this of our guests so far, which is like to match a martial arts style with a comic book character. So, off the top of your head, you know,
well,
a comic book character, what martial arts style should they be practicing, or what martial arts style have they been practicing?
well, you know, the easy answers are, you know, Savat and Batroc, because it's written into the thing. And then you have people like Captain America, where they kind of said it was basically Gymkata, right? Like the old 80s movie, right? His gymnastics mixed with martial arts, which, you know, it's really cool if there's like a pommel horse out in the middle of a field or something, you can go hop on that, but like, I don't know how it works in real life.
Those bars between alleys, you know?
Yeah. But whenever, the one that I think about probably the most often, because I've always wanted to do animation with it, is Daredevil, right? And so to me, I always have pictured him as an Eskrima student of Dan Masano, like with the two sticks, like pulling that sort of stuff off with it. And then you tie it, since the batons are tied together with the thing, you could add so much fun rope dart stuff to that, right? Wouldn't that be so dope? Like, it's super extendable nunchuck / rope dart / Eskrima sticks. So like, if I had to do any Marvel type character and put some legit martial arts that's not in their story into it, it would be Daredevil with the Jeet Kune Do, Eskrima, and like rope dart stuff. But I don't know. I have a Hungar body, even though Mantis was the first love, but you know, I don't have that super long limbed, thin and skinny kind of look that looks so good when you do the form. So Hungar was always the one that like felt right in my body. And so, like, to me, everybody that does Kung Fu in comic books is doing Hungar. Like it just, I assume that's what it is.
Of course.
Of course, right?
I just want to see the Powerhouse Animations Daredevil now. That you the rope dart statement, my gosh, my brain just like,
right?
I that's perfect. That is absolutely perfect. So
right, especially for a blind character who's only going off of sounds and stuff like that. Think about how you could play with that. There's so much you could do.
Oh,
anytime, Marvel, give us a call.
Yeah, no, from our
your
podcast to Kevin Feige's inbox. You know?
Hope so.
It was such a pleasure, and we finish every show just kind of giving a little bit of our information about where people can find us online. So we'll just kind of go around if that's okay with you.
Sure.
And okay, so again, Kurtis Fujita. I have two paths: my Kung Fu school, my comic book stuff. You can find my Kung Fu things on Instagram and YouTube, Tiger Crane 805. For my comic book, it's Shadow Ghost Comic, and that's on Instagram. And we just launched the website, theshadowghost.com. So keep an eye for that. And Patrick, please go ahead.
You can find me on the socials at Lugo or Plugo Arts. You can find me online at plugoarts.com. And if you want to learn more about my graphic novel, you could log on to atigerstale.com, where we have comics already coming out.
And Brad, where can people kind of keep updated on you and Powerhouse Animation?
Sure. So Powerhouse's Twitter is Powerhouse Anim, at Powerhouse Anim on Twitter. My Twitter is just at Brad Graeber. And then powerhouseanimation.com has so much stuff on it to go learn about the crew and a lot of our other projects too.
Definitely do. Well, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us. And we are the Comics Food Show with Brad Graeber from Powerhouse Animation, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Hello, I'm Sifu Kurtis Fujita with Tiger Crane Kung Fu. I just wanted to let everybody know that we do have an online program that we're utilizing, not just for our enrolled students that come to our physical location, but also for students who are in other states, other time zones, other countries. It's a unique program with multiple components that really help you learn Kung Fu and Tai Chi at home during the current health epidemic and beyond. So we have different components. The first part is, of course, the Zoom classes. We have online Zoom classes that meet throughout the week for Kung Fu and Tai Chi. We also have a unique thing which we call our rerun program. And what that means is we record the Zoom classes and we have an archive of dozens and dozens of videos for you to access at any time, anywhere, as long as you have an internet connection. So if you missed a class, you can go ahead and follow along and check it out. Or if you want to remember something that was mentioned in class, you can go back and watch the rerun. It's an archive for all enrolled members. Also, we have personal videos. And what I mean by that is if you film yourself doing an individual technique, you can send it to me and I'll be happy to shoot my own video with a response detailing specifically what you want to do to improve the exercise and do it most efficiently. And lastly, we even have a social club component. And what that essentially means is, you know, when you're at a gym or a martial arts studio, it's that sense of community, the ability to visit with your classmates, with your teacher after class to, you know, socialize. So we have a social club meeting. So once a week after class, we have a Zoom session and we talk for a little bit and catch up with each other and socialize. So these are all the different components that make our unique online Kung Fu program. If you're interested, feel free to reach me at my email address. It's instructor@tigercrane.net. Again, instructor@tigercrane.net. We would love to see you in our online studio. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you, and take care.